I am absolutely speechless. I cannot believe what I just watched. I just got done watching the Netflix Death Note movie, and it is quite possibly one of the worst films that I have ever seen. Which is a shame because I defended this film. I actually had faith in this movie for a very long time. It's directed by Adam Wingard. He directed two films called The Guest and You're Next. They're both very funny horror movies, and they're also very well-made horror movies and well-written. He directed those two movies, so I was excited to see that he was directing this one. The cast looked promising, despite people's complaints about Ellen Light's casting. I wanted to give them a chance. Willem Dafoe is Ryuk. He's superb. I'm just going to get out of the way. He is superb in this movie, and we'll get to that. But this film is a catastrophic failure. If you've not seen the anime, then you won't understand who these characters are supposed to be or what these characters are supposed to be like. Death Note is a manga and anime series. I haven't read the manga, but I've watched the series twice, and I think it's an extremely well-written and engaging detective show. To put it very briefly, the story is about a school student by the name of Light Yagami, or Light Turner as he's called in this reimagining, and he finds the Death Note, which enables him to kill anyone as long as he knows their face and name. He will write their name down in the book, in the Death Note, and they will die. They will either die of a heart attack if he doesn't specify a reason, or they will die of a reason within logic. So if he writes, you're going to get hit by a train, if you're at a train station, then that would happen. The show, the anime, is about Light and a detective by the name of L, who is extremely intelligent, who starts to catch on to the fact that someone is killing people in some sort of supernatural manner. And the two of them have a game of mental chess against each other throughout the show, and they are both trying to outsmart each other, they're both trying to outplay each other, and that's basically what Death Note is about. These two extremely intelligent individuals, one of which a murderer with a superhuman ability to kill whenever he wants from a book, and the other, one of the smartest men alive, who is trying to find out how he's doing this. It's absolutely riveting. If you haven't seen the anime, please watch the anime, or watch the other live-action films that were made. But what I'm talking about now is this live-action film. This film completely fails on every level possible to understand the subtlety and the intellect of Death Note, because the mental war that Light and L have in the anime is not here at all. Now, I want to talk about the characters' portrayals in this movie by the actors. So first of all, we have Willem Dafoe as Ryuk, and he is fantastic. I'm not going to lie. His voice acting as Ryuk is superb. Ryuk is a god of death who drops the Death Note that Light finds, and he is from the Shinigami realm, and a Shinigami means a god of death. Willem Dafoe's portrayal of Ryuk is fantastic, absolutely superb. I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to just bash everything this film does. He is outstanding as Ryuk. He's a much darker Ryuk, a much more sinister and unpleasant Ryuk. In the show, Ryuk's a bit more goofy, a bit more likable even, but this Ryuk is dark and horrible, and I actually liked him. I'm not going to lie there. But the star of the show is Light, and he is played by Nat Wolff, and he was awful. He was absolutely terrible. I could not stand the way that he was trying to be this character. I don't know if it's down to his acting ability or if it's down to the writers, but he was awful. There's a scene, there's not going to be any spoilers, this is just like the basic gist of it. You know that he meets Ryuk, you know that he gets the Death Note. When he first meets Ryuk, when Light first meets Ryuk and he's all scared, he's like, what's this? There's the Death God. That scene made me cringe so hard because Nat Wolff overacts so hard. He's like proper screaming and screeching like, no. That scene made me cringe. I was like, this does not bode well for the rest of the film. And I don't know if that scene was supposed to be funny, if we're supposed to feel as unknowing and as scared as Light feels. that scene was so unclear with its tone, and it was so cringy when he was screaming. Anyway, Nat Wolff as Light. I hated him. I absolutely hated him. Because he didn't have any of the calm, collected manner that Light has in the anime. He didn't have a nice composure about him. He didn't have any sort of character traits that Light has. And having a character change completely is okay, but when you make them in a really annoying, angsty, so irritating character that is just... he swears a lot, which feels so out of character. It doesn't feel right. He doesn't feel like someone who has a nice, honest motive. His motive, again, there's not going to be spoilers, his motive as to why he uses the Death Note is a very personal reason. It's not so much about changing the world as it is in the anime. It's more of a personal vendetta that he has, that he uses it initially. He then decides that he's going to use it and carry on further with it when he meets a girl by the name of Mia, who I think is supposed to be Misa from the anime, who Light pretends that he loves, but he uses her. This film, in this movie, Mia and Light fall in love and they actually like each other, which is absolutely wrong, because Light in this movie is shown to care about Mia and he loves her, and they both work together to use the Death Note, where the entire point of Light's character in the anime was to be a manipulative sociopath. The only thing he cares about is ensuring that he can kill all of the criminals in the world using the Death Note without being spotted, without being caught. And he's willing to do anything to achieve that goal, so he manipulates his own family. He manipulates people that love him, people that are supposed to be his friends. Mia, she was... I'm going to be fair with it. She had a sort of weirdness about her that I appreciated, because they are like psychopaths, they're killers. She had a weirdness about her, but she didn't have much of a character to her. She was just kind of weird for the sake of being weird. She wasn't anywhere close to being a stand-in for Misa. Misa in the anime, a lot of people find her extremely annoying, which she is, but at least she has a character. Her being annoying, they do things with it. Her being oblivious, her being stupid, things are done with that. She's a much more interesting character than Mia in this movie, and I'm assuming she is supposed to be the replacement. They got the relationship between the two completely wrong. They completely missed out on the point of Light having a significant other, the fact that he uses her for his own personal gain. He doesn't care about her. Because that's missing, that's a huge part of what Light is missing already. Now we have the other side of the fence. So we have L, who is played by Lakeith Stanfield. Now, I'm sure a lot of you know, if you followed the build-up to this film, that there was a lot of criticism because Lakeith Stanfield is black, and he is playing the role of L. L is a very pale, white European man who never sleeps, and he's of extremely high intellect, so he sits in a specific way. I'm going to try and do it, and I'm probably going to break my legs. Ugh, crikey, mate. He sits like this with his knees up, and the reason he does that, I'm going to stay sitting like this for the rest of the review. He sits like this because it raises his concentration and his deductive skills by at least 40%, as he puts it. And he eats sugar all the time, so he's there with his sugar. He's wolfing it down. The reason he does that is a very anime reason. So he's like, oh, I'm more intelligent if I sit like this. It's like, fair enough. So, in the movie, we have Lakeith Stanfield, who does sit like this, and he does eat sugar. And for the first about 10 minutes of this movie, 10 to 20 minutes where we see L, I was like, I'm digging him being L. He's got the extremely smart, pretentious voice, the deductive reasoning skills. He's got his deductive, pretentious, posh voice. I really like that. He does that. He sits like this. He eats sugar. But the film just completely falls apart. It gets to a certain point, and again, no spoilers, where L stops doing things logically. He stops being L. He acts in completely out of character ways. Even if you haven't seen the anime, in this movie, he does the stupidest thing. He does completely irrational things. And I lost faith in this movie very quickly. As soon as I saw the direction it was taking, it stopped being... It had an okay setup. Everything was put in place for these characters. I said I was going to sit like this for the whole review. I lied, because I think that's really uncomfortable. How does he do that? This film completely loses its mind. We set up Light and L. We set up the L. L is not introduced very well. The Death Note, how it works, is not explained very well. The anime, think about this. Anime episodes are about 15 to 20 minutes. The first 2 episodes, so that's under an hour. As you're looking at it, under an hour, the first 2 episodes of the Death Note anime are beautifully well made. They explain things. They don't over-explain it, but they explain things in a very clean and clear way. Everything is set up. Light and L are put in place, and immediately the two are interesting. Immediately, even before we've met L. In this movie, we are told that we do follow a lot of the same story elements there. So Light's father is a police officer in the anime, and he is in this movie as well. And L works with the police officer, who is Light's father, in order to catch him down, which is really interesting because obviously his father and son are enemies. But we have L, who acts in such irrational ways, and he is, in the anime, he is such a calm character. He is such a collected character, but he is really like mentally unstable and angry for no reason in this movie, and it doesn't make sense. And the dialogue between Light and L is absolutely cringeworthy. But the biggest thing by far that annoyed me about this movie was the tone, because the tone is inconsistent and it doesn't work. It just does not work. This movie doesn't work. Adam Wingard, who directed this movie, I don't know why, but he is obsessed with 80s culture, 80s neon, 80s synth. And you see that a lot if you watch his other movies. He has a lot of electro synth music, and he's got a lot of deep colours bleeding in the screen because he likes the whole 80s vibe and aesthetic. And he tries to put it into Death Note, and it does not work at all because it doesn't fit, it doesn't feel right, it doesn't gel with what the film's trying to do, which isn't a lot. This movie doesn't really do or say anything in the hour and 40 minutes that it lasts. And this film, it doesn't feel right at all. Not only the tone, but the pacing. The pacing is a mess. An absolute mess because of how poorly explained things are, and of course there's a lot to cover with Death Note because there's a lot of lore and stuff, but you can condense things and you can explain things in shorter periods of time. The other Death Note movies, the Japanese live action films, successfully did that, but this movie doesn't do it at all because it doesn't understand Death Note or the subtleties of it. The pacing of this movie, because of how poorly things are explained, things happen and you're not quite sure why they've happened. You're not sure what characters' motivations are. Their motivations change constantly. They don't have a consistent mindset. None of the characters stick to their character. None of them do. They are 1 minute a certain way, then they're in another way, then they're another way, then they feel this way about something, then they do this, then they do that. It's a complete mess. This movie is just a series of scenes that don't quite work. It gets to a incredibly unsatisfying third act. It then gets to an ending that thinks it's smart, but it's really just a really dumb cliffhanger that doesn't quite work. But it does something that is almost interesting it tries to do something that it should have done throughout the whole film, where we see Light doing a smart move and calculating and planning something, but it's far too late for that now because this movie didn't have any of that, and you can't just put this at the end. This film doesn't work. Nothing gels together. The characters are completely inconsistent. The synth music that's used feels so out of place. The shot composition is clean and it's nice, but the scenes that the characters are in, they don't do anything. Nothing is explained well enough. And I know people criticize things for having exposition all over the place, but exposition was almost done well at the start. when Ryuk speaks to Light and Ryuk tells Light about the rules in the notebook. But this film is a mess because nothing is done with the source material. It's possibly one of the worst uses of source material that I've ever seen. You're given these things to set up. You're given these interesting characters and you try to do something different with them, but you make them do completely illogical, even by this film's standards, completely illogical moves that don't add up. Like some of the things that Mia does, I'm not going to spoil it, some of the choices that Mia makes, they do not make sense. Some of the things that Light does do not make sense, and the things that L does in this movie definitely don't make sense. If you are a fan of Death Note, you will hate this movie. If you love Death Note and you love these characters and you love this universe and this lore, you will hate. What am I talking about? You will hate this movie with a burning passion of 1,000 suns. Is there fan service? There's a little bit of fan service in this movie. Watari, who is L's right-hand man, he gives Light's father an ice cream, which is done in the anime. It's like he gives him an ice cream and he gives him sugar. L is so poorly explained and so poorly implemented in this movie that it feels like there was not even a point of him being in the movie, because there wasn't that, as I said earlier, there wasn't that war between the two really. He just kind of shows up and he's like, I somehow know that you're the villain somehow out of nothing. And they don't do anything with it. Nothing is done with it. Absolutely nothing for the whole film. And then it ends. I'm just going to conclude with this. Even if you haven't seen the anime and you're not expecting certain things of these characters, this film is abysmal. Because what is done with the characters is not explained well, it's not paced well, it's not delivered well, it doesn't flow well, and it's not written well. This film, I'm going to give this a 3 out of 10. And the only reason I'm giving it as high as a 3 is because Ryuk was great and L was great for the first about 10 minutes before his character stopped just making sense. This film is horrendous. It's almost does something at the beginning. It's so close to having something. And then the whole film just falls apart. This movie is terrible. Sorry for the long rant. This has been a long video, but I had to get this one out. If you have any other thoughts on this movie, do leave them in the comments. If you put yourself through this film. And that's all from me. Peace out.